In 1916, construction workers digging the 7th Avenue subway line in Lower Manhattan uncovered a series of wooden beams in the wall of their tunnel. They had stumbled upon a shipwreck nearly 20 feet under Greenwich Street near what is now the World Trade Center's Cortlandt Station. The foreman realized this could be something important, so he asked local historians and archaeologists to come down to the site and check it out. But none of them were interested in it, or at least not enough to go and excavate it. So he took it upon himself to recover whatever he could. He and his crew took 8.5 feet of the ship's keel and 3 exposed frames out of the ground. They said it was so difficult to pull out of the wall that they suspected the rest of the ship was still there, buried just beyond their reach. In the 1960s and 70s, when the Port Authority started building the first World Trade Center, they expected to find the rest of the vessel because they were digging right next to the subway tunnel. But they never did. Instead, they found other things like a ship's anchor, a swivel gun bearing the insignia of the Dutch East India Company, and another, smaller vessel that, once again, people didn't seem to want to keep or document. Nearly 40 years later, construction crews were building the new World Trade Center. This time, archaeologists from the consulting firm AKRF were present, monitoring the site. They could excavate and recover whatever it is they might find, and in 2010, they came across yet another ship. This one was more than 20 feet under Washington Street. It was much more intact than the previous wrecks, although only the lower portion remained, including the ship's keel, frames, and the inner and outer planking. There was also a small section missing at the bow, where the construction crews built a slurry wall that cut through the ship. Now, when you think of the World Trade Center, shipwrecks probably aren't the first thing that come to mind, so let's talk a little bit about what they're doing here. Manhattan is an island, and it used to be a bit smaller than it is today. Here's a map of New Amsterdam from 1660, and here is a modern Google Earth view. The basic street layout is still there around the old or natural island, and all of this extra stuff is landfill. For hundreds of years, there was an intentional effort to expand the shoreline for a couple of reasons. For starters, it meant that there was more room to build things, but also, the water around the tip of Manhattan used to be very shallow and had a very shallow slope. That meant merchants couldn't bring their seafaring ships right up to the island shore, so they had to ferry their cargo over on smaller boats. The colonists would fill in these mud flats, the intertidal zone and shallow areas, then build wharves and piers out to the deeper parts of the harbor so that the merchants could directly unload their cargo. That kept happening over and over and over again, pushing the shoreline farther out into the harbor. The 2 ships at the World Trade Center almost certainly served as a way to expand the shoreline, so what are they? The identity of the 1916 ship is still up for debate. For a very long time, historians believed it to be the remains of the Dutch ship Tijger. In early 1614, Tijger was commanded by the Dutch explorer and merchant Adrian Blok. Blok was preparing to sail back to the Netherlands after trading with the native tribes in the area when a fire broke out and burned Tijger down to the waterline. The crew abandoned ship and built a new one to make the journey back across the Atlantic. Today, nobody knows where Tijger sank, only that it was somewhere on the North River near Lower Manhattan. It is completely understandable why historians thought this was Tijger. This 1916 ship absolutely burned at some point because the tops of the frames were charred. The subway construction crew also found a Dutch axe head among the timbers. In 1955, radiocarbon dating gave it a date range of somewhere between 1590 and 1640. Plus, the cannon with the VOC insignia on it was found nearby. However, there are also reasons to believe that this is not the Tijger. In the late 1990s, a Dutch underwater archaeologist studied the remains and found that it didn't quite match what you would expect to see in a 17th century Dutch ship. The stem post doesn't attach to the keel in the way you would see on a Dutch ship, and the frames are smaller and farther apart than you'd usually see on an ocean-going vessel. Plus, it's in a landfill. Without a detailed excavation, it's hard to tell if anything recovered alongside the ship is related to the ship. As it turns out, that cannon they found is probably from 100 years after Tijger sank, so if this is the Tijger, the cannon is completely unrelated. On top of that, there were also some questions about the radiocarbon date. It was still a new technology in the 1950s. Scientists were still trying to work out some of the early problems with radiocarbon dating, and one of the ways they corrected it was through dendrochronology. Today, the Museum of the City of New York has the ship's remains in its collection, and as of this video, it looks like they're going to use dendrochronology to re-examine the timbers to figure out once and for all if it is the Tijger. The other ship, the one discovered in 2010, did have a more detailed excavation and has had more research since then. At first, the archaeologists thought it could have been a small cargo or ferry ship because it had a flat bottom and shallow draft. Those were very common features for 18th century riverboats and harbor craft, so early reports and studies called it a Hudson River sloop, which were very common in New York. It also could have been used as a coastal trader because it had evidence of shipworms from the Caribbean. However, as they excavated more, it became clear that it was some kind of small warship. It was just too short to be a cargo ship. It didn't have the space to be a practical, cargo-carrying vessel. The ship's lines didn't match any known riverboat, but they found that it was almost identical to a late 18th to early 19th century gunboat. It was also built in the same way as other known gunboats, like the Philadelphia on display at the Smithsonian and the Spitfire, which is still at the bottom of Lake Champlain. Then, the archaeologists found military-related artifacts. They found a 4-pounder cannonball, grape shot, buckshot, bird shot, and musket balls. Aside from maybe the bird shot, this was all common ordnance for a late 18th century military site. They also found a pewter button for the British 52nd Regiment, who had been stationed in New York City in 1778. Now remember, this is still in a landfill, so why do these artifacts matter more than the ones found with the 1916 ship? The oversimplified answer is that these artifacts were found within the ship. And I don't mean within the area that was the ship's hold, because that was filled in by the landfill. The military artifacts were found between the ship's frames and planking. They were inside the ship's structure, which isolated the objects from the rest of the site. In other words, these things were already within the ship when it entered the landfill. In addition to the artifact analysis, the researchers did a dendrochronological study on the beams. It revealed that a lot of the wood came from the Philadelphia area no later than 1773. That's a very important detail because the 52nd Regiment was also a part of the occupation of Philadelphia during the American Revolution. It seems like this ship was an American gunboat built to protect Philadelphia or the Delaware River. Then, the British got a hold of it, sailed it around the East Coast and the Caribbean, before finally bringing it to New York, where it eventually made its way into this landfill. There is a lot more to this story than I could ever tell you in the length of this video, but luckily, some of the archaeologists who either excavated the ship or conserved it have given some talks that you can listen to here on YouTube. So I'll leave a link to those in the description if you'd like to hear more about it, and directly from them. But if you enjoyed this video, and you'd like to see more like it in the future, let me know in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.